Right. Welcome to the next meeting of the Yorkshire and Humber Scrutiny Network. Really glad we've been able to do this. I just want to first of all start by saying thank you to Lisa from Connect for agreeing to initially host this in person. And actually, it turns out we've got a good number. So we just didn't want to hold it in person. There weren't quite as many people as we wanted, but we still wanted to get everybody together. So we'll just do some introductions first, and then we'll go into the first bit. So I'm Simon Phillips. I'm Community Engagement Officer at Leeds Jewish Housing. Just go around the screen. Dakota.
Hi, I'm Dakota, and I'm from the Broadacres Housing Association Customer Scrutiny Panel.
Thank you. Saiful.
I'm Saiful Alam from Manningham Housing Association, and my role is Involvement and Engagement Officer.
Emma.
Hello, yeah, I'm Net Zero Delivery Manager for Connect Housing. Thank you.
Okay. Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm a Tenant Involvement Officer at North Yorkshire Council.
Thank you. Kirsty.
Hello, I'm Kirsty Waller. I'm from Archers Housing. I'm a Tenant Engagement and Communications Officer, and I have a tenant with me.
Hi, I'm Estelle Crossland and an Archers tenant.
Okay, thank you. Jude.
Hi, I'm Jude. I'm a Collect Housing tenant. I'm on the Community Voice group, is it called now? Yeah, thank you. Used to be the Service Improvement Forum. I'm a resident.
Okay, great. Lisa.
Hi, well done, Jude, because I still call it the SAFE CVG. So I'm Lisa Stead, and I am the Tenant Engagement Officer at Connect Housing, and I'm here with...
I'm Hannah. I'm the Community Coordinator, so I lead the Tenant Engagement team at Connect. So.
Okay, thank you. Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol. I'm a Tenant Involvement Officer at North Yorkshire Council.
Great. Laura.
Hello, morning everyone. I'm Laura Tilney. I am the Interim Housing Strategy Manager at East Riding Council. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this call, but I wanted to come along and meet everybody and see who would be best placed in the authority to maybe attend this going forward.
Okay, you're very welcome, Laura. Jason.
Well, everyone, I'm Jason Snowden. I'm from Broadacres. I'm the Customer Engagement Officer.
Thank you. Carly.
Hi, I'm Carly Tate. I'm the Customer Insight Apprentice at Broadacres.
Thank you. Louise.
Hi, my name's Louise Darby. I'm the Customer Engagement Manager at Leeds Federated.
Thank you. Paul.
Hi, yep, Paul Brannigan. I've got a posh title, Executive Manager, Calder Valley Community Land Trust. I am the only employee though, so it's a bit misleading.
So I guess you always win Employee of the Month then. Okay, Annette.
Hi, I'm Annette. I'm one of the Tenant Involvement Officers over at North Yorkshire Council based at Selby.
And finally, Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Lomakin. I'm a Service Improvement Coordinator at Leeds Federated Housing.
Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you for coming. So we have a few presentations this morning and into lunch. Beginning with me. Let me see. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah. we can see it.
Yep.
Okay, right, great. Welcome again. So I'm conscious that this could be the first time that some people have come to this network. So I thought what I wanted to do in this introductory bit is first of all briefly talk about the Yorkshire and Humber Scrutiny Network, what it is. And then I just want to go through a few slides to do with a couple of things that have been happening in the world of social housing with implications for our work as involvement and engagement officers and also as involved residents as well. There's two things I'm going to focus on. One of them is to do with some developments from the Housing Ombudsman, but in particular, some recent reports to do with severe maladministration, because obviously we want to get everything right as involved residents and involved staff. And then I want to talk a little bit about the Stop Social Housing Stigma campaign, because one or two people expressed an interest in hearing about that. So I'm going to go through the slides as quickly as possible. I am aware that we have quite a tight window, a few people to talk. So I will be sending the slides afterwards as well as an actual recording. So don't worry if I go through some of the slides really, really quickly. So this scrutiny network is a network of associations, authorities and residents based in the Yorkshire and Humber region. So it differs from some of the similar meetings that we might always go to, which might be from landlords in the north, or we might go to national things. This is specifically about this particular region, the best region in the country, of course. It's to discuss the impact of national developments at a local level, providing an insight into resident scrutiny engagement by those with lived experiences, promoting the value of scrutiny engagement, and sharing ideas across the region, providing a forum for critical friends, and I'm thinking of our involved residents in particular, to feedback on successful or unsuccessful initiatives and organise any project work. It's still very much in its infancy. The network kind of met every quarter before I started in my role. It's mostly online. And then the last few years, we've met every 3 to 6 months, mostly face to face. So it's still very much something which is very, very organic. And we tend to use these meetings to talk about what people want from this group, because we don't want to duplicate anything which is already happening. And if people are saying, well, actually, we're talking about the same things elsewhere. Okay. So that's what the network is. So what I want to move on to is tell people a little bit about some things which have come out from the Ombudsman in terms of severe administration report in the last 3 months. And the reason I want to focus on that is that if we are doing everything right as landlords, and if we are doing everything right to involve our residents, then we can actually avoid a situation where we have complaints and where the Ombudsman need to get involved. But we do know that things go wrong. So I just want to flag up some of the themes that have come out in Ombudsman reports in the last few months. For those of you who want to look at the reports in more details, the Ombudsman have a really, really good website. And several landlords are mentioned. For me, it's not so much about naming and shaming landlords. It's about looking at the wider themes. Because even if the stuff that we do doesn't get to the Ombudsman, there's always ways in which we can improve. So we last met towards the end of last year. In fact, no, I think it was February actually. And I just want to mention a few things in the last few months. So the Ombudsman's report in April focused on lessons in communication. And some of this might be familiar to some people about the 4 T's, that when we're communicating with residents, it needs to be timely. So we're not waiting a week or so to get back to them, or even longer. It needs to be transparent. If we're telling residents things, we need to tell them exactly what is happening, be completely honest with them. It needs to be tailored. So when we're communicating with residents, don't assume if it's the quickest thing to do to send emails, just send an email. What works best for different residents? And it needs to be tone as well. The when we're talking to residents, and in fact, when residents are talking to us, often it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. And one of the things that the Ombudsman had noticed with the landlords that they looked at is that there was bad experiences of people being rude, offhand, being distracted when somebody was talking to them. So that's where tone of communication comes in. And many people will be familiar with the Spotlight report on attitudes, respect and rights, which was undertaken a year or so ago. And these 4 T's come into it as well. So that was some of the learning from April. The learning from May focused on triaging repair reports, delayed response to emergencies, and prioritising household circumstances. So it's really about dealing with vulnerable residents, that when a resident calls up, what might appear a routine repair actually is pretty serious to many residents. A classic example that I always use when we're talking internally is, say, a broken toilet seat. Now, for a lot of people, we can pretty much manage with a broken toilet seat, maybe for a couple of days or so. But if you are somebody who has particular disability, that could actually affect your ability to actually go to the toilet. There's other things like not having a light bulb in the bathroom, which might be seen as an inconvenience. But if you are waiting a week or so for that light bulb to be changed, that is actually quite significant. So the report from the Ombudsman focused on landlords who weren't really taking into account individual circumstances when a repair was reported. The June one focused on leaks and safety hazards. Now, there is an important involvement and engagement bit here, really, because again, it focuses on the implication of minor or even major leaks to a property that, again, for some people, a minor leak that might happen in their property, okay, they might be able to live with it for a couple of days, but for others, it might mean them moving out of a property. Or safety hazards like loose wiring or loose paving as well. That's something which for, a lot of our vulnerable residents is actually quite traumatic. And that's what the June 2025 severe maladministration report, focused on. The July one is probably one which is quite large and perhaps most significant for what we do in the world of involvement engagement, because it focused on, broadly speaking, incidents of antisocial behaviour where landlords had failed their residents. And there were 7 different headings which are focused on here: hate crime, multi-agency work, ASB where it relates to repairs, action plans relating to antisocial behaviour, risk assessments, communications and complaint handling where that related to ASB, and noise, which in many ways can be ASB, but it's actually quite nuanced actually for those who are familiar with some of the stuff that's come out from the Ombudsman. And I just want to quickly go through these individual headings. So the Ombudsman spoke about hate crime and harassment and some of the ways in which landlords needed to improve. So we know that residents can be subjected to hate crime across a variety of different characteristics. And what the Ombudsman said is that landlords need to examine any complaints relating to hate crime to make sure that there's a right support and approach in place. So sometimes it might be that when you're dealing with a report of hate crime, it's something which you need to get other organisations involved with. You know, it could be that, for example, if the hate crime relates to Islamophobia, you might need to get an organisation called Tell Mama involved, who are a third-party reporting and support system. Or it might be if there is hate crime relating to gender, and remember that misogyny, for example, although not legally recognised as a hate crime, can be a hate crime. You might need to get involved, you know, a support organisation in that respect. Hate crime needs to include separate policies and procedures and how it's recorded, and the importance of hate crime as a priority report, dealing with it as a priority, because it's so serious and sensitive to many people. Really, it goes to the core of who people are as individuals, and the importance of landlords identifying persistent perpetrators of hate crime amongst the resident community, and again looking at improving services. The importance of multi-agency work. A lot of the stuff we can sort out ourselves as landlords, but sometimes we need to look at other organisations who can help us. It could be the police in many ways. It could be, again, specialist organisations who deal with disability hate crime, for example. It could be working with the local council, unless you are a council yourself as a landlord. The importance of communication. And what the report talks about was what happens when multi-agency working isn't in place. So where there's poor information sharing, poor relationship management, and looking at where there's underlying causes. So it could be that there's an ASB issue which happens because there's no joint up working with local organisations. And although we mention about police, it's important that organisations who are working with the police don't become too dependent on police actions. We actually have an example from our own association, as a matter of fact, where we've had to deal with an issue which it needed police attendance, but to get the police to come out and to look at CCTV took longer than we'd hoped. So there was perhaps more of responsibility on ourselves to actually investigate this than there might have been. Antisocial behaviour and repairs. So we know that sometimes when ASB happens, it might relate to a repair. So it could be an ASB which relates to noise where the walls are quite thin, or ASB where, for example, I don't know, grass needs cutting, which could be a landlord responsibility, or it could be ASB where a window needs repairing or some graffiti needs clearing up. And what the Ombudsman were talking about is, think about how quickly repairs need to be carried out where there's an ASB case and somebody might be traumatized by the ASB incident. Again, it talks about coordination, internal communication and involvement with the resident. So in many cases, the team that deals with the ASB report and the engagement with the resident might not necessarily be the same team who is responsible for carrying out any repairs. And this actually links to an Ombudsman Spotlight report to do with repairs and how the importance of maintaining trust with residents where the repairs process is carried out. And think about how ASB and disrepair issues contribute to the overall quality of life that residents may be experiencing. I've mentioned briefly about disconnect between different teams as well. Action plans. So one of the things that we need to do when an ASB incident happens is make sure that we document this all the time, and often an agreed action plan of who is going to do what when is so important, in managing expectations and making sure that communication is important. And the Ombudsman said that a lot of the complaints they receive relates to how landlords handle ASB and how they mismanage expectations. And there's a responsibility on residents here that sometimes residents need to make a note of when things happen, dates, times, and often noise diaries, for example, are something that we often tell residents to keep a note of. Yes, we will deal with the report of noise, but it's important that residents keep a note of when things happen and who's doing it. And although action plans are important, it's important that landlords shouldn't use those to buy time. So not to say we will deal with this within a month. There's sometimes immediate steps that need to take place as well. And good action plans can reduce the stress and anxiety that residents might have about the situation in question, and can contribute to a sense that the landlord has heard their concerns and is doing something about it. And the action plan can summarise when the resident can next expect contact. So it's about managing expectations on both sides as well. So if the landlord says, we'll get back to you by next week, by next Monday afternoon, for argument's sake, the resident knows, okay, that's when I can expect contact. So there's no need for me to contact my landlord to find out what is happening. I can expect a call. So it goes back to communication. Risk assessments, the Ombudsman mentioned as well. When we receive ASB reports, yes, there might be standard fields that we need to put in, but we need to check for any harm or vulnerabilities. Is the person reporting the antisocial behaviour, or is the person who is carrying out the ASB, do they have a vulnerability of some kind that we need to take into account when dealing with it? It could relate to how quickly we deal with it. If we don't do a risk assessment looking at harm and vulnerabilities, it could actually put everybody, including landlords, at a disadvantage, and can lead to service failures later and possibly ombudsman involvement. A disconnect between risk policies and practice on the ground. That's something the Ombudsman talked about as well. This links to the first point about residents' needs. So looking at any health issues, physical and emotional, physical, mental, and how it's recorded on landlord systems. And again, the importance of multi-agency working as well. And the final thing here is about how the organisation responds to the information that we put in our risk assessments. And some of it is about not how it's resolved, not how an ASB issue is resolved, but whether we need to apologise to residents for how we might have dealt with that ASB case as well. And communications complaints handling came out in the July report from Ombudsman as well. And how we need to remember that ASB is something that often happens in or around somebody's home, and the home isn't, it's an emotional place. It should be a safe place, and that's why it can cause such deep distress. The Ombudsman reiterate the 4 T's of communication I mentioned, the importance of balancing empathy with impartiality. So even though we might take into account somebody's physical or mental issues or somebody's vulnerabilities, we still need to be impartial here. And the importance of landlords not confusing whether somebody's complaint is about an ASB issue or how the landlord responds to it. And the other thing they mention is a distinction between service requests and complaints as per the complaint handling code. So often you might receive what appears to be a complaint. So when is this going to be fixed? But actually it's not really a complaint, it's just somebody following up a repair request. or somebody following up a call that they made last week. And it's distinct from an actual complaint. And this can actually help learning from complaints. And this is the final bit of what the Ombudsman said. We know that noise and nuisance can undermine community cohesion and well-being. And often noise transference, or often what can be perhaps expected in normal flat living, perhaps in a block. So the difference between that and ASB. So, if you live in a block, there's a certain degree of noise that you might actually expect, particularly during the day. But that isn't always antisocial behaviour. And the Ombudsman talk about a good neighbourhood policy, but sometimes the noise can be a symptom of other activities that might be the root causes of ASB, such as illegal subletting. So it could be that there is noise, but actually the noise is caused by the fact that there are more people living in a property than should actually be there. So it's all to do with investigating the causes of noise. And again, the importance of multi-agency working, and its importance that coordination with other organisations is effective. And the Ombudsman talk about local authority landlords, where sometimes internal communication might be an issue. And then finally, some of you might be aware of the Spotlight report on noise. Okay, that was the first bit to update everybody on. I will just quickly go through Stop Social Housing Stigma. Some of you who attended the National Housing Consortium Resident Involvement Conference a couple of weeks ago might have seen bits of this presentation. Those of you who haven't, I just want to take you through some of the slides relating to that. We're probably all aware that social housing stigma has been an issue for some time. This was something that came out after Grenfell with the ministerial roadshows. So the Stop Social Housing Stigma group was created by an amazing group of residents who said we need to stop stigma. And what's happened over the last few years is an amazing amount of work from social housing tenants with landlords and with some academic institutions to actually really unpackage this. These are some screenshots of some of the reports that have been done, and those are freely available on the internet. Okay. And the Stop Social Housing Stigma group, they talk about what do we mean by stigma, and that's conclusions about someone because they live in social housing, biased assumptions, perceptions about the neighbourhoods where people live that they might be inferior, perceptions about how housing staff, contractors, and the media treat tenants with respect or without respect. So that's how they actually define it. Negative consequences. And this is something which both the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister have spoken about the shackles of stigma. Of course, we know that Angela Rayner was born and brought up in social housing herself, so she's very well placed to talk about social housing and social housing stigma. And the group basically realised that there's a long-term journey of change that needs to be taking place here. It's something which has been in the system for some time, over many decades. There's a long-term journey of change. And so I want to tell you briefly about some of the things which has happened. So in May, the group spoke about the Tackling Social Housing Stigma Journey Planner, which involved several social housing landlords, mostly in the south of England, looking at what they could do to address social housing stigma. And there's various videos which actually talk about this. There was a survey which took place using what was called a journey planner, which I'll talk about in a minute or so. And there was a survey of 364 tenants, 63 housing professionals, and 9 contractors. And this wasn't another toolkit. What it involved was different groups looking at different aspects of social housing stigma, which was to do with culture, how tenants could lead change, tackling stigma in service delivery, staff, stigma and governance, and the importance of celebrating the various local authorities and housing associations, them quite large, so like Newcastle, L&Q, Progress Housing. The pioneers, as they were called, chose up to 2 tickets or 2 of the themes that I mentioned on the previous slides. There were workshops, action plans, and various action points which came out of those. And some of the conclusions were, and I'll just mention some of them, there needs to be a strategic approach, showing the value of tenant involvement, culture of ownership, importance of action plans with other landlord action plans and change programs, tenant involvement in regulation. And then what's happening next for the Stop Social Housing Stigma group? They are drafting an action plan which focuses on a range of things, working with scrutiny panels, webinars, roadshows, a stigma week. There's a whole new various other things they're doing, but what they actually want to focus on is the importance of more people getting involved. So they want more people to get involved with the Stop Social Housing Stigma campaign. And people can join as individual tenants, supporters, organisational memberships, and it's free. And there's a QR code here as well, which takes people directly to the Stop Social Housing Stigma website. And this is some of their media, their social housing media. So Stop Social Housing Stigma organisation social media presence. So those are some of the things that I wanted to tell everybody about. I know it's been somewhat tour through some of the things which are happening, but I hope that's kind of food for thought for you all. Okay, and perhaps in the bits where we talk about bits about discussion, we can pick up on some of those things. Okay, so slightly later than anticipated, but we did start a few minutes later. I want to hand over to Lisa and Hannah from Connect Housing to talk about some of the great work that they're doing.
Hi everyone. Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Oh, good. That was slightly delayed. Right.
I think that should be showing.
Oh, is that showing?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah, we're from Connect Housing. We're based in Dewsbury. We work across Leeds, Kirklees, Calderdale, and we are kind of leaking into the geographical areas just outside of those. We're a fairly small housing association. We've got 3,500 properties, and we just wanted to talk to you today about some of the changes that we've made recently. Well, over the last year and a half, we've put lots of effort into kind of revising what our offer is in terms of engaging our residents and the different ways that we do that. So yeah, I kind of run with this. I'm going to keep going.
Shall we jump in?
We've prepared the slides. So yeah, there is another one of us. So we've got Emily, and she's on leave at the moment, and she's fantastic. So yeah, I'm Lisa, and I kind of take the lead with the strategic element, so making sure that residents kind of have a voice in helping to shape our policies and strategies, and hold us to account and look at our performance. I work quite closely in that, and also in terms of scrutinising us throughout the organisation. Emily takes the lead with the local level engagement, so the community stuff. She's really, really good at that. She's new to engagement, and she's literally jumped in both feet first, and she's making great efforts. So she works with local community groups in helping them to make sure that they're up and running, that they can access funding and other opportunities, and obviously works very closely to support me and Hannah in our roles. And then Hannah's our boss.
Which makes it sound much more official than I actually am. Yeah, so I kind of oversee all the stuff that's going on in the team, and then I'm the lead for co-production internally as well. So we're trying to, with all of our customer-facing policies and strategies, have some form of resident engagement in that, to ensure that what we're doing is actually reflecting what the resident voice is telling us. So we've been looking at the damp and mould procedure, for example, and the tenant handbook, and we're just currently looking at building a customer charter as well. So that's just a little overview of the kind of things that we do with our local level community work. So we've got a number of residents associations, not loads, but a handful that have come to us and have wanted to be constituted and have kind of an official set up for the way that they run. So we offer them support in anything that they do. We do check-ins with them to make sure that they're kind of progressing in the way that they want to, and if there's anything else that we should be doing in order to support that, and offering them, help to finding funding opportunities. We do have a grant program that we run internally, so they get a community grant every year for constituted residents groups, and then we also have other pots of money that we have access to, trying to utilise more of the social value pots that are available from contractors, and building that into our procurement at an early stage to ensure that contractors are, when they're coming to us, we're getting other staff to think about how they support our projects as well, because it's not just something that we want to be pushing forward. We're also trying to do a lot of neighbourhood planning as well with our housing officers, so working with the communities to really hear from them and consult on what it is that they want to see from their estate, and from the various departments internally, because we all know that there are plenty of grumbles that come up time and time again, but actually having that in an action plan which can be reviewed and tracked is a much easier way of showing that we're listening properly and hearing and acting on what residents are telling us. So yeah, lots going on from the kind of local level community work. And yeah, so I was just talking about the co-production work that we've been doing as well. We're trying to sort of rebalance the sort of power structures that we've got. I think we all internally recognise that whilst we are professionals and we have a duty that we have to enact, actually, if we don't have resident involvement in that, there's not much point in us functioning, because we're all here to serve what the residents need is the best. So yeah, we've been working really hard to try and improve some of the processes that we've got. The customer charter is the big project at the moment, where we've been working with a group of residents and have had survey results from a wide group of people that have come in, and it's about building a kind of consistent level of service, which we do already have internally. It's just not written in a particularly concise way kind of across the business. So each service area have got their particular service standards, but we don't have a customer care overarching approach. So a customer charter is going to help residents, when they're speaking to us, know what to expect exactly, and help staff can be more on board with it, understanding what it is that colleagues are expecting of them, and then what residents are as well. So that's a really exciting piece of work. And
I think just like part of the embedding of that is it's just showing that the changes that we've made internally recently, that we're actually strengthening ourselves, our position as a team within the business, because I'm sure as resident members and professionals here today, you're aware that teams can just get stuck in their own silos, and that's not because they don't want to be collaborative. It's because there's a job to be done at the end of the day, so you can get stuck and be focused on just your area of work. But the customer charter, it's a fantastic example of it being embedded. So, you know, in terms of staff, we don't have performance reviews as such. We have a facility called the check-in where we have informal conversations, but that are captured. So the charter will be built into that process. So it's making sure that everybody's really accountable for these promises and commitments that we're making to our residents in terms of being respectful and, you know, having open and honest conversations and building that trust. And it's been really good to see that kind of come to life, hasn't it? You know, we had some staff training sessions at the beginning of the year where we're pushing the new culture, which is kind of just organically grown, but we wanted to do some formal training around that for new members or for some people that might need brushing up on the skills a bit. And there was lots of conversations that happened, lots of participation. It wasn't just staff being talked at. And there was loads of great suggestions out there and lots of feedback on what they think is that we used the National Housing Federation's Code of Conduct as kind of the scope for the days that we'd had the training on and built up from that. And there was lots of great feedback from staff. And you've done an exercise where actually it's not just feedback from residents, but you've got the feedback from the staff from those sessions to help build and go into the charter, haven't you?
Yeah, it's trying to make it truly a collaborative piece between everybody to ensure that everyone's on the same page. And mostly things that have come out are what would have been expected, you know, good communication and being polite and respectful and, you know, those sorts of things. But it's just having that clarity of it, having written down somewhere really obvious, just helps us embed that. And I think there's a growing movement internally that people are seeing the positive effects of our work and coming to us with suggestions of things they want to look at as well. So, you know, we're branching across the organisation. We're not just working in our own sphere, which is really exciting as well.
One of my most favourite sayings. So I've personally been in tenant engagement for many years, and I've said to people for all of that time, like, we need to be like more proactive in what we do rather than reactive. So don't wait for something to go wrong or don't wait for something to come up like across the sector. We need to be forward thinking, and I think that's really the changes have shown a more proactive approach from our colleagues, hasn't it, in terms of saying, oh, actually, we want to look at this. How can we get residents involved in that instead of us going to them and saying, we know you've got this coming up. We want to make sure that the residents' voice is across that. So it's really is a massive culture shift and a change. One of the things I've not put on the slides today, because I kind of wanted to do a bit of a focus on scrutiny, because obviously that we're here about scrutiny as the main network thing, and wanting to give some questions at the end for food for thought and feedback. But like our main residents body, I would call is which Jude is on, is our customer voice group, formerly known as the Safe the Service Improvement Forum. And the CVG kind of sits high up in our structure in terms of governance. So we look that we've got our leadership team, our board and the CVG, and they work in a cycle together to make sure that strategies and performance and policies are going in the right direction. CVG doesn't just look forward at, oh, what are you going to do with this strategy? Have you got the residents' voice across that? Can we feed into that or give some feedback if there are some specific questions? But they also look back and say, oh, actually, we were looking at this last year. We said we were going to track it. Where's that at now? And holding us to account. We've had a great, I think, I can't see Jude right now, but I know she's going to be nodding and smiling. But we've done lots of work in terms of the recruitment. So we've got members that have been involved for many years. and that's fantastic. But we've really struggled to get some more residents involved. And I think with the shift in how we work and the shift in focus from the residents on that group, we've actually been really successful in the last 12 months to recruiting new people to that, and people that are coming and actively participating and are having a voice, and we've got a much more representative group. Lots of work to be done still and a couple of vacancies to fill. But yeah, we've already got like a couple more people lined up that have said we're interested, and we've like strengthened the terms of reference. We're looking at doing some training with them because they're like, yeah, we're fine, we're cool, we don't need training. And probably don't, but we just want to build on that knowledge and experience with them some more. So we've got some training modules coming up as well. But yeah, it's a really, really positive move. It's probably the strongest that group's been since we formed it about 14 years ago. So I'm really proud of that piece of work too. But we also won an award as a team internally at Connect. So we have the Values in Practice award ceremony on an annual basis. And our team was nominated for 4 awards.
I think so, yeah.
So Emily got nominated as an individual, and then as a team we got nominated 3 times, didn't we, for awards, and we won Innovative Team of the Year. And I think that was really, it made us proud, but we definitely earned the award, I think. And on the back of that is all these things that we're doing that's differently. And one of the things that we did differently last year was the Scrutiny Boot Camp. So when I attended the last one of these network sessions, which was in person in Leeds, I was talking about scrutiny at the table that I was on. So some of you might recognise me if I was sat with you, and I was talking about this idea I'd had about having a scrutiny boot camp. Because traditionally we always had that model of, we had a group of scrutineers, the topic was selected by the CVG, so the group that Jude's on, and they'd go and do an in-depth review and come up with a list of recommendations for change and improvement. The report would be finalised, and then it'd go to a strand of our board for them to make the decisions on what recommendations would be adopted, and then they're tracked until they're complete. And that's all great, but again it came back to this really struggling to recruit new people to the group. And it's okay saying, oh, it's a smaller commitment because it's per topic rather than the CVG, which is ongoing. But actually, you know, we as professionals, we can't just make assumptions that it's a smaller project so loads of people should want to join us, because that's just not happening, is it? So I was thinking about how to do things differently. And we decided that we wanted to trial using a boot camp method, and if it didn't work, that's fine, because no one's going to be angry that you tried something new. And we would have been able to get a piece of work out of it anyway. What we didn't want to chuck away was the wealth and experience and knowledge that our scrutineers, which is a small group of 5 people, have, in terms of they know how to scrutinise Connect. They're a really good established group. They've got good rapport with each other. They've done this a few times. So we didn't want to kind of waste that, because we saw the value in that. And for me, scrutiny needs to be resident-led from the beginning. The topic is chosen by our residents on the CVG. And then from that first initial meeting, I want the residents to be kind of pushing forward the direction and, you know, creating the scope and doing the reality check-in and then looking at what needs to change. So we actually use the scrutineers to kind of be they were like the planning panel, weren't they, for the event. So we said, okay, people don't want to get involved in this because it's still long-winded and the word scrutiny can put anybody off. We try not to use it when we're advertising or promoting. So we decided that we'd adopt a model where we'd use the scrutiny panel to kind of plan and scope, but actually the scrutiny thing itself would culminate in a one-day event. We stayed away from using the word scrutiny, and the topic that was selected was voids. And again, that's jargon. We can't just assume everyone knows what a void is. So we decided to brand it as the Empty Homes Review. So we called it a community review of empty homes. we did lots of work in terms of promoting that with our different groups and sending out different types of communications to people to kind of pique their interest. Leading up to that, last summer as a team, we went door knocking, didn't we?
Yeah, we're trying to use some of the TSM results to try and target, because obviously we all know that you can't go back to people and ask them the real reasons why they've scored, but particularly we're looking at that positive contribution to the neighbourhoods score, which, you know, some areas was particularly low in, and we wanted to understand a bit more about why that was. So we used that as a basis to look at the areas that was poor performing and go door knocking and have some conversations with people, and then, you know, try and target some areas that we don't speak to as much, and see what we got back. And we had a really positive response, actually, yes, which was refreshing, because sometimes it's a bit demoralizing trying to recruit people and people aren't as interested. But we had we recruited quite a number of people to that, and then that's formed part of the basis of our inviting those people to come to the event as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good thing is, I think, because we sold it as this community review of empty homes, and we was like, it's very informal, it's just a few hours of your time. We have an offer, which again, each organisation is very different, but we pushed on the positives. You know, we will sort out your transport, we're going to have a nice lunch. We held it off site, and that was a conscious decision. We could have used it. We've got a beautiful room downstairs, which you would have been in today if we'd have gone ahead in person. And we were tempted to use that, obviously, because of the cost implications and stuff. But we decided to hold it away from our offices because we thought that might give like a formal feeling to it, where people are coming into their landlord. And we didn't want that to be off-putting, so we used a venue that was independent of us, and we were really pleased. We had people sign up to the event, and you always know, as a professional, that on the day, if you've got 10 people sign up, if 5 attend, you're going to be really pleased, because there is always an element of dropout, because life happens or people change their mind. But I think because of the steps we've made to make this different, and also the hand holding that we've done leading up to the event, we had 100% attendance, which is just unheard of in the 17 years I've been at Connect. I've never had 100% turn up to anything. And of that group of people attended, 10 of those people were completely new to us. They'd never been involved in any way, shape or form before. So again, that was a really good build. We carried out the review. We had our colleagues there. We kind of did a variety of activities to try and keep it fun and refreshed. So we started with like speed dating rounds, but not dating on a romantic level, but more just about, you know, getting to know each other at a different level. But it was speed dating the staff, so that it was breaking down those barriers of, oh, this person's here. Making sure I said to staff beforehand, don't be coming like suited and booted, come in your comfortable clothes, because I just wanted to break down any barrier where someone could see someone approaching them with a job title of head of in a suit and tie. And, you know, without me making sweeping statements, just recognise that I want people to feel as comfortable as possible. So we did speed dating. We kind of hosted. We did a question around if you could improve the process for empty homes, like how long a home's empty, what would you do if you had a magic wand? We asked that question of the staff. We sat them at the front, which was a bit mean, but it was almost like they were a panel to have a discussion amongst each other, and the residents observed that discussion. So it was an observed discussion with the opportunity to feed in with questions, which they did. Yeah, really warmed up to that. But it was good because we had all the people tied into vibes in the room at the same time. So we had the people that are leading the strategy and the delivery of the service, but then we had the frontline staff who on the tools doing the work, the lettings team who are obviously working closely with our behind the scenes void team, so the people that are kind of managing the frontline staff. and our voids officer. So we had people that were frontline, we had managers, and then we had heads of as well, all in the room at the same time. Because that's the reality, isn't it? Sometimes as an organisation, if you ask someone at a different level, how's this right now? The answer would be very different at each level. So it's about being able to capture the reality and those sticking points. And then we had some lunch, and then we went into a couple of workshops in the afternoon where we split people into groups, and we kept them in them groups then just to help build that rapport and relationship. And we moved the staff around, and we were very conscious. We wanted to ask some hard-hitting questions, but we wanted to make sure that the staff felt comfortable as well and that they could be really transparent. So we made a conscious decision for the last workshop to have the frontline staff have these lines of questions with the workshop tables, and the senior staff were out of the room, and then we swapped that round. We brought in the most senior members of staff and asked the frontline staff to leave the room while the residents had that discussion with them, just to kind of try lead a more honest approach. But yeah, it was fantastic. 11 recommendations were made that came out of the report, and 8 of those were adopted. The 3 that weren't, there were reasons for that, and that was fed back to the members, the residents, and then ultimately the CVG, so the group that Jude sits on, and they were quite happy with how that's gone. And the tracking of those will happen now. So every time Jude meets with her group, they have a look at any outstanding recommendations from scrutiny, and they get a progress report. So they know when things are due, but they still get a kind of a keeping in touch comment if something isn't due and where it's at. And if something goes overdue, then Jude and the rest of them do hold Connect to account in terms of saying what's happening with this. We want an answer. Why is this not being implemented? But yeah, we loved the boot camp. We took a risk.
I think one of the main things as well is that what we're trying to do is show that to staff that we're part of their support network as well. This is not just an opportunity for residents to scrutinise us and look at the way that we're doing things, but actually it's giving staff more of a voice as well, because everybody knows in their organisation the stuff that's going on that they wish they could change, and sometimes it takes a bit more of a push from a different angle to get that change involved. And we had some really positive feedback from staff to say that they enjoyed the process, which we were really keen on making sure that they did, and would be actively involved in other stuff that we've done, and would recommend it to other people that this is not a scary thing to look at your performance in a particular area. It's actually helping you get the effective change that you want to make your service better, because not many people are coming to work thinking they want to do a bad job. It's very rare to find that, and if we can help push some of that change forwards, then we're doing the right thing for staff as well as for residents. It's all coming to the same end point at the end.
Absolutely. I just saw a message pop up from someone very quickly asking what the recommendations were that were made, and just off the top of my head, because you've put me on the spot, but they were kind of around the processes. So some of the recommendations that were made were quite huge in terms of they didn't feel that the computer systems that we had to kind of work I'm going to use the word void here rather than going back to empty homes, because we all know that that's what that is. But the system that we have for voids wasn't up to scratch, and that came out at every level that we spoke to. So ultimately, one of the recommendations was about having a good system in place. And, luckily, as a business at the moment, we've been through lots of change in creating lots of new systems, and that is one of the things on the list. But the good thing is that it's now giving it a bit more oomph in terms of making it more of a priority, because it's being tracked by board and it's being tracked by the customer voice group as well. And some of the recommendations were quick wins, so things that you wouldn't even think of, and that's the beauty of speaking to staff from different levels, people that are out kind of doing the work and getting this turned around, and the lettings team. So it was around making sure that when somebody hands in the notice, we get that kind of communication right with them at that first point in terms of expectations, how we expect them to leave a property, how we expect them to how and when we expect them to get the keys back to us, and how we expect them to kind of work with us leading up to them leaving the property in terms of letting us in so that we can start assessing what might need to be done, or having those difficult conversations about people bringing things up to speed, because you know, it's not all of ours, so I don't want to make out that we've got a huge amount of residents that don't respect our properties, because that's not the case. But in some cases, as you know, properties are left with lots of damage or things that need to be put right before people leave. Some of the recommendations was around the managing of keys when they come back into the office. So obviously when there's multiple people needing to go in at different points, it's about making those empty homes accessible, because obviously the key to going into a property is having a resident there to let you in, but when that becomes empty, it's about better managing those services and things like that. So I'm not going to digress too much, but if anyone wants me to send them the recommendations that were made afterwards, if you just let Simon know and he can send me a list, I'm quite happy to share that. But yeah, just kind of the next thing that we wanted from this group. So as the host, I was like, oh, Simon, can we just talk about some changes we've made? But this last slide is kind of what I wanted to speak to you about the most. So the next topic for our scrutiny has been decided by Jude's group, and that's the barriers for being engaged, which we're really excited about as a team, because it's funny because we're the leads for scrutiny, and now we're going to have the scrutineers scrutinise us. But it's going to help us to hopefully break down some more barriers and understand those groups of people that we're not able to access, we're not able to interest, and it might help us further develop our offer and our model. So I just kind of, I've set this as tabletop discussions when initially we were in person. I think Simon was looking to split us into groups, but I realise that we've run over quite a bit, so I don't know if it's just a general question we want to kind of ask, is there anyone in the room? So I'm kind of trying to think, has anyone done any work looking at barriers of being engaged, and what was that? How did it go? And if not, what methods or activities do you think could work well to help break down those initial barriers, to help start conversations with people to find out what's stopping them from being involved? Or are we just going to be entering the new, pioneering this kind of topic in looking, you know, we always talk about you need to involve more people, you need to look at groups that are being left behind, but we kind of want to smash through the just looking at that and speak to those people, don't we? Yeah. So over to you. Any people want to interject?
I'm happy to start. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Hannah. We so we did something called a communications charter, which was a set of commitments to how people can contact us and how we can contact people. So if somebody has a communication preference to be contacted by email, we'll make a note of that. If somebody wants something in large print, we will do that. Sometimes it's easier said than done, because if we're doing mass mail outs, we have to remember, so this person needs it in large print, this person might need a few images, so easy read type images, this person is happy with email, so it's a bit of a challenge really, but it's something we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think for us, like, we're quite keen on making sure that we know people's preferences, but it's just that initial, I think for me, I sat down and took an hour and a cup of tea, and I went and sat down with a notepad and thought about all the things, all the barriers. So me being able to communicate with people in the right way or offer the right activities for them to tap into is great, but it's just that initial, so leading up to the boot camp, we did so much comms leading up to that actually, even though we got lots of feedback, it was disappointing we didn't get more. And we we kind of need to just discover what is that barrier. Is it because it's perception we're seen as a big scary organisation, or is it because of how we communicate? You know, when we're sharing things online or in our newsletters, are we kind of selling it that we're an organisation that works with this group of people and that doesn't include you? Or is it because what we offer just really doesn't whet your appetite? Or ultimately, is it because, well, I just see you as transactional, you're a landlord, I pay my rent, and that's all I really want for do your repairs, that's all I really want from you, I don't want to be involved. But I think
which is fine, you know, there's no problem with people choosing to not be involved. I guess it's if people do have the want to be involved, but there's something that's stopping them, you know, what, understanding that a bit more, because we don't really have any data on it. We know we've got gaps, we've got the data on the gaps of where that is, but the knowing why is something that we've never really looked at properly in depthly before.
Yeah, and we don't know how best to communicate with those people because we don't know if they actually want us to communicate with them in the first instance.
Yeah, they might not be keen to hear from us at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, you know, Connect on board and the CBG were blown away with the trial of the boot camp method. I think they're keen for us to do that again, but Hannah and I have discussed it. We want to keep doing boot camp, but it needs to be appropriate to the topic. And actually this one we feel needs more of a presence of us going out with residents to communities, quiet communities. Even if we go under the ethos of we're going to do a fun event and we can just quietly ask you some questions while we're there. So it's not that we're consulting people, we're doing something different and we're going to try and get, you know, two birds, one stone. So the boot camp is a fantastic thing to do, and I definitely recommend it to other organisations to try. You know, you might do your scrutiny like that anyway, but for us it was very, very different from what we normally do. But ultimately for this one, for the barriers, we need to kind of make some initial contact with those people and break that barrier so we can start to have a conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you just said there, Dakota, as well. I completely agree. I think that's one of our targets for the year, is to try and increase our under 35s representation, because we know that's a massive gap. And we do have some supported housing young people's accommodation, which we're going to try and really utilise their connections a bit more to try and boost that section, because we are missing it massively in our conversation so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we've been keen on doing when we've been doing the door knocking and we've been promoting like the community review is that it's not just for the resident, it's for household members too. So if you live in a Connect property, that would include you as long as you're an adult, because we're not working with children, we are working with adults here, which is really exciting, because I feel like and Jude might nod and agree with me again, but some of the newer members of the CBG are kind of bringing down that general average age of the group, because we're targeting younger people too. It seems to be working. We've had another person contact us 2 weeks ago who's interested in the group and wants to come on and observe the next meeting. And he's 31. I was like, wow. It's like you almost know that we've got this new direction. But it's not to dismiss anyone that's above that, but it's about making sure that we are getting a good mix of people being represented, which is not just, it's not just an age thing or a gender thing, but also on like thinking about geographically how our residents represented, because people in Kirklees might feel very differently to people in Leeds, and Leeds is quite big. And also thinking about ethnicities and communities that are reflected. So we always say to someone when they're involved strategically, so with CBG and scrutiny, is that you're not there representing where you live, you're there for all of our residents. But we need to hear your voice and how things feel for you in your identity of who you are. So even though you're not, I'll say I'm 44, but I wouldn't represent all 40-odd-year-old women with young children. but I can, you know, give that lived experience and make sure that Connect are considering me and people like me when they're making decisions moving forward. But yeah, I think Dakota's right, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do is, I think when we're kind of thinking of the next scrutiny review and going in with the let's sell it as a different thing rather than consultation, is that we're trying to pique the interest from people. So Jason, did you?
You look like you were about to say something, Jason. You're on the
No,
edge
I
of
was
your
just
seat.
gonna Dakota's been really helpful. Dakota's a Broadacres customer who's come through. I mean, Dakota will probably share her own sort of story as how she's got involved, but she's been really valuable in that sense. I just was going to ask if anybody's tried, like, so one of the barriers I think we maybe see is that the times and that we do things like during core hours, a lot of the sort of engagement stuff is midweek, sort of during the day. And I think one of the things that we're maybe going to look at is doing things that are like, you know, more accessible to people that work, because we sort of alienate a lot of our residents by doing things the times that we do them. And I just wondered if anyone's tried anything like that and whether they've seen any benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have a residents federation with over 300 members in that, so it's quite well represented. At 10% of our profile were members of that. And they used to meet bi-monthly, and most of the meetings were in the afternoon, and they trialled for several years actually, and they decided to have 4 meetings which were during the day and 2 which were on an evening. And the problem that we had with that group, that the evening meetings, there were always less people there. But actually, the people that came to the night meetings were still the same people that came during the day. There were just less of them. And we've done different things. So we've done consultations on weekends as well, on like Saturdays. And
yeah, I think what we're trying to look at is we're very conscious that to lead some of these things, we need to be there, and obviously we work during the day, so that's the main issue that we kind of poses there. But we do try and work as flexibly as we can do, and we're also looking at trying to build more offline engagement where people have got opportunity to, like, we can put something, like we're looking at developing a policy approval group where we can like upload things digitally to a particular place, and then people have got opportunity in the space that they've got, whenever that may be, if it's, you know, people coming off a night shift or on an evening or whenever it is for them, they can go on and add their feedback to that remotely, and then it'll come back to us that we can review, and we can work with people in just a more flexible way. But it is really tricky. Louise, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, last year we had a round of recruitment for our customer voices panel, and then we did we just asked if people were interested, and then we held these induction sessions, and the most well attended ones were on Saturday morning. And people also, some people mistook it for just as you know, a drop in a way, and just to come and raise things. So we were surprised really about, we had quite a lot of people come along to that. It is you know, for the customer engagement team, I think it's sort of okay, but you know, we're used to working outside office hours and loo time and stuff like that. It's when we have to get colleagues involved that it becomes more of a challenge in terms of working at weekends or evenings. But I think it's something that, as more and more people are working, it's something we sort of have to try. And I think as long as we're not doing it every weekend, it's only sort of, you know, quarterly, then it's something we should accommodate, really.
Yeah, and I think our vision for the policy approval group, so it's one of the things that we don't want to lose is that context. So that's setting the scene. So, you know, if we're going to move to that being our offer for people to engage with us, whatever the time of day works for them, we don't want to kind of lose what we would offer that. So that level of context setting. So we're thinking about using, maybe trialing, using like vlogs where they can watch a 2-minute video of us kind of setting the scene. It could actually include some of our engaged residents that are already involved. Jude always volunteers for lots of stuff, so watch this space. but yeah, it's not just about working people, is it? I spoke with a lady a couple of weeks ago. I was just doing some data collection with her, and I asked her at the end, "Oh, you sound really good. Have you ever considered being involved? We've got loads of opportunities." And she said to me, "Oh, I'm got two very disabled children who require lots of hospital visits, and we don't have a plan that, you know, the set days of the hospitals. We've got lots of contact where I'm just not, I can't give someone a firm commitment." And I said to her, one of the visions is about this policy approval group, and just kind of went down that road for her. She said, that would be perfect for me. She said, because I can't, you know, for working people, they might say evenings or weekends are better. She said, but I couldn't tell you what evening, weekend is better for me. She said, but I'd love to be involved. And if you had something like that, then I could still be involved when I get a 2 or 3 hour break and I can log on in my own time. And I think that's kind of the vision, isn't it, for that?
Okay, we'll hear from Saiful and then we'll go for a break. Over to you, Saiful.
You're on mute.
Yeah.
I'm just going to touch on quickly on two projects I'm doing. One is called Mela. It's about festival, and we're doing it in Keighley and Bradford, and this happens every year. Now, in terms of, you know, we've just had a discussion in terms of timing. We're trying to accommodate everybody, and as well as staff and the wider community, you know, we serve, and we have it between 6 and 8 in the evening, so it accommodates everybody. So that's the project, which is, you know, for everybody, you know, young, old, children, you name it, everybody from all walks of life. And the other one, which is, you know, very unique at the moment, is a work with a Leeds Jewish Housing Association, and we're organizing what's called community linking project. So the community, for example, in Bradford, which we're operating from, that community has over 7 nationalities within the tenancies, and we're going to link it with Leeds Jewish Housing Association, you know, group there, and we're trying to get engagement between the two communities, you know, sharing ideas, getting involved, and basically, you know, the theme is community cohesion. So, you know, everybody is equal, and hopefully it'll be enjoyable. We've got, hopefully in late August, September, we'll have exchange visits between the two communities and share ideas. So those are the two projects I just wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Saiful. Yes,
Thank you.
I will speak to you outside this meeting to firm at those dates. Right, shall we? I know we're a little bit late, which is my fault, but shall we come back in about 10 minutes and then we'll go to you, Lucy?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simon.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to finish at 1 because I've got another meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Is that okay?
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. I will be in touch with you.
Yeah.
To
I think
confirm those.
you know, any time in September is good for me. Yeah. And we'll organize, you know, something in September, you know, rather than in August, because I've got, you know, loads of stuff in August happening.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I know you said 1st of September is good. Yeah, that's fine. And do the other one on the following Thursday or something.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and we'll just do it because I'm gonna liaise with you know, the Science Museum and get the the date changed as well. So hopefully that should be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll keep in touch anyway. Yeah. So I'll
Yeah.
if I can finish at 1, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I can't remember now.
Right,
Can you see that properly, Simon? It's like a full screen.
Yes, I can.
Oh.
Yes. I think most people are back. So over to you, Lucy.
Yeah. So hi everyone. Yeah, I'm from. Oh, I think Lisa's got a hand up. Oh no, maybe not. I'm from North Yorkshire Council. I'm a tenant involvement officer there. And Carol's on the call as well still today. She's a tenant involvement officer too, so she might jump in, or if there's any questions, she can help me out as well. So Simon asked me to come along and talk about how we've sort of changed our involvement approach. So I'll start off with a bit of context and a bit of background around North Yorkshire Council, and then we'll sort of go on to what our new involvement offer looks like. So the formation of North Yorkshire Council, so we have brought together 7 former district and borough councils. That was in April of 2023, and become a unitary council, a really big council that covers a really large geographical area. 3 of those former districts and boroughs have council housing, so that's Harrogate, Selby and Richmond. So that's 3 different areas that have different ways of doing tenant involvement, different staff, as you can imagine. We have about 8,500 properties across the county at the minute. And obviously at a similar time to us coming together, the consumer standards are brought into action, and this meant lots of change in lots of different ways. So early on in the local government reorganisation, heads of services were appointed. So we got a head of service for landlord services, and he proposed a staffing structure which saw a tenant involvement manager and 3 full-time equivalent officers. So that was a big change for us. So in Harrogate there was a full-time officer, in Selby a part-time officer, and in Richmond there was just someone did tenant involvement as like a little side part of the role. So it was a real commitment to involvement, and it like showed the dedication that was going to be put in the resource. So yeah, we now have a manager, 2 full-time people and a part-time officer at the minute. All this change obviously saw us do a self-assessment, and we did actually self-refer to the regulator of social housing in June last year, and we were given a C3 grading. One of the areas that we weren't compliant in was tenant involvement, or parts of tenant involvement. So we are in like regular contact with the regulator to show that engagement and to show that we are committed to change. We also started working with Yvonne Davis, who is a tenant involvement expert, I suppose, and she has a few consultants who work underneath her, and we decided to go ahead with that for a few reasons really, to sort of get that expertise and that expert knowledge, but also show some independence to tenants, and that yeah, we were really committed what we were saying we were committed to. So yeah, this is a fresh start for us. We did a few things. So to start off with, we sort of co-created this new strategy with tenants. That's sort of like a small steering group of tenant volunteers be quite involved with the strategy making. Then obviously we put it out to a consultation to the wider tenant base. We also started to like create a bank of tenants, so that'd be tenants that were previously involved and people that we'd come across in day-to-day work that we thought might want to be involved. We'd try and ask the questions of like what they're interested in, what commitment they can give, and what they want from us, why they'd want to be involved. While this was going on, we sort of held interim meetings mainly in Harrogate, where the involvement was the strongest at that time, to sort of keep things going and let people know our plan. But it did take quite a long time. We shared, this is our strategy here, we shared this strategy with tenants only at really the start of this year really. I think the consultation ended in February. So this is just like a little graphic that shows the main parts of our strategy. So we have a tenant scrutiny group now, which wasn't established at all before we all came together. That's a group of the 7 tenants, some people who have never been involved before, and some people who were involved in the previous areas. They've met quite a few times now, and we do have the help of a consultant from Yvonne Davis with that. She's sort of running the group as that external independent body, and they have decided to scrutinise the complaints process as their first project. They've just got going with that. They agreed a scope at the end of last month, and they are sort of like starting the initial tasks. We relaunched our tenant magazine, which we've called Open Door, and alongside that sits an editorial panel. So again, that's a group of tenant volunteers that help co-create the newsletter, any sort of communications, really, the annual report. I think we also hope to sort of expand that into just more general comms that go out. We want tenants to sort of have an eye on all communications, tone, stuff like that. That was quite easy to recruit to. We found quite a few people being interested in that because it might be something that they're interested in their personal lives, things like that. We have this housing improvement board, which is quite high level, and that's made up of elected members and senior managers. And the reason this is included in the strategy is because the idea of that is that everything that goes to the housing improvement board, so performance information, policy reports, will always go through the tenant involvement vehicle before it gets to them. So it should always include a tenant voice. That hasn't been 100% successful yet. We're still trying to get into sync up the meetings and like get into the flow of how that's going to happen. I think that's going to take a little bit of practice. The Tenant Voice Forum is like our main tenant involvement sort of mode, and this bank of tenants that we were building, they form this Tenant Voice Forum, and we want them to meet once a quarter to sort of discuss performance information, service improvement, and then we want them to sort of add onto the agenda anything that they'd want to discuss. So at the last meeting, they wanted to have an update on damp and mould. We've changed our allocations policy, so things about that. And we also have task and finish groups coming off this forum. So previously, we just fed everything through all tenant involvement meetings, but in this new strategy, we wanted to have a main sort of bank of tenants that I keep on saying, and then these task and finish groups that shoot off of it that are more specific. And they've been probably some of the most successful things we've done in this new strategy so far, and something that's really worked for us. So we asked for tenant volunteers from this bank of people and hold like quite informal focus groups. They've all been around policy at the minute. So we've done like a lettable standard, a repairs handbook, disrepair and compensation, and it's just a really open conversation with tenants and officers to sort of tweak a policy have some influence on decision points and just get the tenant voice. That we are about to start a grounds maintenance task and finish group because we're going to be reviewing the grounds maintenance policy. That's starting this month, and we've had quite a bit of interest in that because it's something that affects most tenants. And this is going to be the first one where we're elected members and tenants are collaborating together. So they're going to be holding the task and finish groups with tenants and members in the same room, discussing the same things, being given the same papers, and they're actually going to go out on joint site visits together. We sort of identified that we need to improve relationships between the council as a whole, but members and tenants, and I think this is a good way of getting into that and strengthening those relationships and getting rid of the us and them, a bit like what Lisa was saying about this hierarchical, you know, we don't want any agenda like that, we just want a level playing field and we're all working towards the same thing. So that's what we're hoping that'll go well and be the start of many repeated task and finish like that. We've also got these community action days. I think we took a bit of inspiration from Broadacres with this. So this is something completely new in the strategy, and we've actually just finished our first chunk of these. So did these, called them spring clean days, and went out into various parts of the community over a good few weeks, and provided some skips and some litter picking, general cleanups of areas, and they were really well attended and really successful. I think this is one of the ways that we will probably get people involved who haven't previously got involved. Lisa touched on having some activities that don't scream involvement, but that's what you end up getting out of it, and that's what we found here. So we're in communities helping people, you know, clearing up communities, clearing up people's gardens. It's a positive for them, but we're able to use it to sort of ask some questions about the neighbourhood, how they found the council to deal with, what we could do better as a landlord. We actually did get a few people wanting to be involved from that would probably never respond to what we usually do to recruit. So they were really positive, and we're just sort of thinking up some ways that we can do them again later on in the year. That's a bit different to a clean-up. And then we also have this My Housing Voice, which is again still developing. This is our digital offer at the minute. It's just sort of an email address that people can get in touch with us, that we put in the newsletter, and it's on the website, and we have seen quite a lot of things come into that, but we hope to sort of make that a lot bigger, maybe like subscribe for updates, or we can send out like a bite-sized newsletter that's just centered around engagement to people who sort of subscribe to this My Housing Voice. We also really want to get a bigger social media presence, which is proving quite difficult for us. Obviously, where we're a local authority, we have residents of North Yorkshire Council and tenants, and it can be quite hard to get something approved that is just for tenants, because it is quite a, you know, it's a small group compared to residents. So we have a North Yorkshire Council Facebook page and Twitter and everything like that, but there could be some reluctance to put things on there that are just geared towards tenants, because it technically is a smaller group of people. So that's an ongoing work, and a lot of our tenants that are involved will look at housing, like some of the people that are on this call today, look into their organisations and at their websites and their social media, and that's something we really need and want to get. And a lot of our tenants, it can be hard to explain sometimes why that's not happened. It's frustrating for us as it is for tenants. So that's the overview of our strategy really, and what's going on now. I'll move on, touch on it slightly, but sort of our ambitions and what we're going to do to grow this strategy. And we were very clear with tenants when we were creating this with them that it's going to be something that probably does change over the next couple of years and is tweaked a little bit. We're trying new things. Some things are going really well, some things aren't progressing, and it's just going to be a little bit of trial and error. So we definitely want to hear from the wider tenant voice, and it goes back to what's already been mentioned about those barriers for getting involved and how we can break those down and what we can do. And really just championing this co-creation approach. We're trying to get tenants involved at like the birth of everything rather than at the last minute, that's what we were doing at the previous district and boroughs. It wasn't good enough. So trying to work on that and get this partnership approach. Tenants are aware that we're self-referred and that we're non-compliant, and I think that can sometimes affect the perception of us and you know, make people, they might already have a negative view on the sort of exchanges they're having with us. So as a tenant involvement team, we've found that because we obviously we're in the housing service, but we do kind of sit aside in a way, and it's especially on the community days, we've found it quite good that we're sort of removed from the service that they're receiving in a way, and we can work on that to people feel more confident to build a relationship with us, and then once they're involved, those relationships with the wider housing service can improve and sort of be dug into a little bit more. We obviously want to improve our TSM results, and we're hoping that the tenant involvement strategy and the new things that we're doing will help with that. A lot of it is obviously around perception and how we're viewed, how easy we are to deal with and stuff like that. That's something that we're always trying to improve on. And also just improving sort of like the tenant involvement profile within the service and within North Yorkshire Council as a whole, within teams. We are lucky that our higher senior management is really dedicated to tenant involvement, and obviously with the consumer standards now, it can't just be something that's an afterthought, which I think sometimes it was before that. It has to be something that's really a priority for everybody. I think that's going to take a while, especially with like property services and things like that. We call it housing standards at North Yorkshire Council, and it's just about tenants hearing from that side of things. Often that's where complaints or bad experiences start. So it's making sure us and the property services team are really, you know, talking to each other. They're coming to us for things, we're going to them. We're just trying to make that relationship as strong as possible and make sure tenants are confident in challenging stuff that goes on in that department. So I've already touched on some of this, but yeah, where we are now, so we're quite up and running with the scrutiny panel. We do want to recruit to it a bit more. So in the area of Richmondshire, we don't have a tenant representing or from that area yet. We just didn't have any volunteers from that area. So it's obviously highlighted that we need to get out and do a bit more promotion in that area. The Tenant Voice Forum. So this bank of tenants, it is actually over 30 people strong now, which for us is some of the biggest numbers we've seen, which is brilliant. But we are finding that where we are a little bit further on now, and we have got cracking with quite a lot of groups and meetings, we're sending things out to this quite large group of people, but we're getting the same people attending all the time. And I'm sure that that's quite similar for a lot of people, but if anyone has any sort of advice or what they do to try and get, you know, the people have said that they want to be involved, but is it just that what we're offering it doesn't appeal to them, or is it the times, like we say, or is it too much? So I think we need to do a bit more digging into that. Yeah, get out and about a bit more. That's a really big priority for us, get into the communities. And that brings us on to what we're going to do next. So we're hoping to, Carol has set up getting us a minivan. So we're trialling this minivan with the ground maintenance task and finish group, and we're going to go on some site visits, and we hope to use this van in the future to we have a lot of rural areas in North Yorkshire that might not have made contact with the council, and we might not have made contact with them for quite a long time, and they have different priorities, different issues with the council to those in our more urban areas. So we want to get into the rural areas more, take involvement to them rather than always expecting people to come to us. We also need to get to know our tenants a bit more. Comes on off the back of sort of like the knowledge report from the spotlight report from the Ombudsman, and it sits again with our non-compliance. So we have really big gaps in our customer insight. We don't, you know, we can make assumptions about who our tenants are and who we're serving, but we actually don't have any evidence to back that up. So we need to, yeah, we're looking at commissioning sort of like a big census that we can carry out that'll census all our tenants to get us more up to date with this information. We're also hoping to carry out like a big door knock that'll be led up by tenant involvement to update this information, and then hopefully we can use it to sort of like lead to service improvement. We talk about with our scrutiny group that you know, processes would be a lot better if when someone rung up, for example, the person answering the phone knew, you know, any vulnerabilities that tenant had. You know, if someone rang up to report damp and mould, at the minute everyone is sort of treated in the same way, whereas if it could be flagged up that someone had COPD or asthma, or you know, that they can't clean mould themselves, that could sort of lead to service improvement into how it was dealt with. So that's a really high priority. Also recruiting to tenant involvement, that's just something that goes on in the background, I'm sure, for all of us. At the minute, it's in our quarterly newsletter, every edition. But that's really the only. I don't know if Carol can think of any other ways we recruit at the minute. We don't, so we need to sort of really make that a much bigger priority and roll that out with comms and share some good stories about what has been happening. We've also created this sort of like involvement tracker, which I think we could use if we formatted it in a bit more friendly, more exciting way. Use this tracker to recruit people. We made it to sort of so we could look back as a team and see what we've done, because I think it's really easy in involvement to sort of like not realise all the good things that you've done and how it's impacted the wider team. So we created that. Obviously it'll also be a really good resource when we do come to get inspected to sort of evidence everything that we've done. So I think if we could sort of pull from that some really good good stories, that could help get people involved. And it also does help with the wider service to sort of, if we can show other teams how improvement has come from involvement, it can have a positive spin on things. I think a lot of officers can sometimes view scrutiny and involvement as like, oh, you know, they're coming in to tell us what we're not doing right, which I think isn't always the case. And instead it can just be really simple things that we wouldn't necessarily think of that can lead to something really positive. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Any questions, any advice? I think Carol's put some things in the chat. But yeah, and we definitely need some advice on recruiting, getting bigger, sort of improving those relationships between, we don't have a board, but members, and you know, that is kind of our board. If you anything you could advise on stuff like that.
Thank you, Lucy. Lots of people have made comments
Brilliant.
in the chat here, which is fantastic. About action days, Carol asked about, and Kirsty mentions neighbourhood days, and Kirsty's contact details are there. Tenant engagement with regard to retrofit work from Emma. Yeah, that's been a really, really big thing in social housing in the last few years.
We are actually going to be starting some engagement around retrofit. So we've got some second wave of funding to retrofit quite a large number of homes. So we're going to be starting some engagement in the next couple of months. We're hoping to do some like show homes. So we already have some really successful stories of tenants having a lot of retrofit works done, and the, you know, very disruptive works. So we're hoping that they might offer to sort of open their house up, or we can do it on an empty property for people to come and look round, and tenants to be able to ask other tenants questions about the reality of what it was like. And hopefully that'll help get people more involved. We had a tenant that's had retrofit works done. The improvements team went to her to sort of ask for some tenant voice around how they can improve things in this second wave of funding, where it's going to affect a lot more people. And she made a really good point about offering to put items in storage for tenants. So we're reluctant to decant tenants, but if we could offer to put things in storage for people, it means that, you know, you're not climbing over stuff, and things it just makes things a lot easier for people, especially if they're older and they're having to move everything. So I think that's something that's going to be taken on board for this next wave that has obviously come from a tenant recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Thank you. What we can do is we can connect you up with various other people on the call. Okay, right. If we move straight on to Paul, and then we can claw back a little bit of time. So welcome, Paul. Welcome, Paul, from Calderdale Land Trust. So over to you.
Okay, let me just get to my presentation. Take me 2 seconds to organize myself. Okay, share screen. And can you see a slide from me? Y&H scrutiny meeting?
Yep. We can see it. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so let's get started. I mean, I'm happy to take questions as we go. I can't see the chat, but if anybody wants to interject with their voice, that's fine. The Land Trust, Calder Valley Community Land Trust, we're based in Calderdale. Our aim is to give people peace of mind through secure tenancies at affordable rents, sort of enabling people to put down roots and plan for their future. When I grew up in a council house, it felt like my house. It wasn't the council's house. It was our house. And that's the sort of feeling that we want to give to our tenants, that they're there for as long as they want to be there. We also do something slightly different. We hold land and property on behalf of the community. I'll touch on that later. We're constituted as a member-owned community benefit society. So we have 352 members at the moment. It costs £1 to become a member. You get a share in the land trust. We also have charitable status. We also are a registered provider of social housing, and that's quite unusual for a tiny organisation like ourselves, but we've certainly found it to be worthwhile. And we also have a subsidiary company for handling our non-housing activity. And that's basically because we need to protect our housing from any risk in our non-housing activity. So 352 members, we have 12 trustees, all very involved, very active. And we have an advisory panel, and that's people with specific expertise who we can just call on: legal, landscaping, flooding, whatever. There's a whole host of experts in there, and they're just happy to be available when we need them. And one employee, that's me. So that's that's us. Simon mentioned, sort of guided me with, we've had a bit of a conversation, building communities being the theme. So we'll move on to how the Land Trust builds communities. So we're custodians of land and property that is valued by the community. So because we take on buildings and land that is used by the community, that gives it ensures that people value the land trust, basically, because we care. We're picking up this building here, you can see, is Fielden Hall. It's a community centre, a community hall, hosts weddings, meditation choirs, women's open talk groups, dog training, you name it, it happens in that hall. We also have 2 affordable homes that bookend the hall. So the fact that we were gifted this property and secured all of that activity, then you know, people really value the land trust and thought, yeah, these people care. So that helps us to build our community. Another community building we're taking on is Hebden Bridge Signal Box. So that's going to be on a lease from Network Rail. So the upper half will be a heritage centre and the bottom half will be converted into holiday accommodation. And the sort of proceeds from that will help us maintain the building. Railway fanatics are definitely fanatics, so we can see this being a great project that promotes the work that we do. So off the back of that, we're going to really push what we really care about, which is the affordable housing. The people who are actually involved in the land trust, the trustees, myself, I hope, we're all part of this community. You're effectively talking Hebden Bridge, Todmorden, Mytholmroyd. So you're probably talking about, I don't know, 10, 12,000 people. Everybody on the board has a good reputation, good knowledge, very experienced people. They're people who make things happen in the valley, so that helps. People can see that our trustees make good things happen. The time is donated to the community. That helps build our reputation. And we are accountable in all sorts of ways, either in the pub being challenged about the piling noise from our new project, on the market. We've got office in the town hall, people come there. Basically, wherever we walk, we will have a land trust conversation. So we're there, we're available, whether we like it or not. The other way of building communities is through, let me just check. Oh no, I missed one out there. Anyone can become a member. So we believe that through membership, there is a sense of ownership that people can have. And it's a real sense of ownership. Members have a vote on what we do. They have a say in what we do. And I think they also, because of that ownership, they have a sense of pride, so that when we deliver a project, they feel part of that delivery. So that really gets people involved. And we also have, as a community benefit society, the opportunity to issue community shares. So we've done 2 major community share opportunities, and they raised around about £400,000 that's invested in the organisation. So again, that gives people a feeling of control over what's happening. That 400,000 has created homes, 6 independent living bungalows. There was a contribution to that, and the affordable homes at Fielden Hall, and also another home in Hebden Bridge, which was, let's say, generously given to us, not given to us fully, but heavily discounted. The owner wanted to protect that house from becoming another Airbnb in Hebden. He wanted it to be a protected asset, which we could do. So he sold us to us at a discounted price, gave us a 0% mortgage for 100k, so we could buy it, and we put some other money in there and community shares. So people are invested in what we do. The other aspect of building communities, our public meetings have been really successful. They average somewhere between 50 and 100 attendees. We've done them on retrofitting. We got homeowners who'd attempted retrofit to speak, as well as the experts. So we got the sort of direct valley experience on traditional buildings, which was really good. We had one on housing and older age. That one, because all the properties around here are really old, they can be pretty difficult to manage when you're getting older. So out of that meeting, someone donated us some land that's suitable for housing and doesn't flood. So that's a nice one, a nice side benefit. We did one on affordability, really understanding what is affordable housing. How do we calculate it? How do we create more of it? That was a great one. Rentier Valley, Rentier City is a book that was released last year about the impact, about basically how Manchester's housing was effectively social housing for a long time and how that's basically been sold off and then investors have moved in and the effect that has on people. And we have, I don't know, sort of similar themes in the valley. So we called it Rentier Valley and that was a really successful meeting. And our recent one last month on refugees and asylum seekers, we felt that was really important. There's an organisation in the valley called Calderdale Valley of Sanctuary, which represents refugees and asylum seekers. So we partnered with them to deliver this meeting. It was interesting on social media when we publicised it. You got all of the very strong minority views coming out, and we just let them get on with that. Our tactic there is to ignore the haters and just keep pushing the positives, which we did throughout. And you know, we got really good feedback, turned things around there. So that was a great meeting. All of these things have led to the delivery of more affordable homes, either through donations, new members, loans, and so on, and just obviously involving people. So that's our building communities. One of the things we can do is, as a land trust, is affect change locally. You know, that's what we want to do. I mean, personally, I look at the news and I feel pretty helpless, which is why I work for the Land Trust, because I can actually do something constructive in my locality that changes people's lives. So the story of Fernie Lease Enterprise Centre and Housing, our town board secured just under 4 million for an enterprise centre. And the idea was to bring modern jobs to Todmorden. Our young people go out to uni, study modern stuff. There's no modern jobs in Todd. So we wanted to create a home for businesses that would foster that and hopefully give those people an opportunity to come and work in the town they grew up. There was nobody available to take on that project, though, which is a bit strange when there's £4 million and nobody's going to deliver it. So we had a conversation. We said, we'll deliver the project, your enterprise centre, but we'll only do it if we can add housing to the project. And the town board were dead keen. The accountable body, which was the council, who are extremely risk averse, I think, as councils are, weren't that keen. So we met a lot of resistance because they were saying, well, you're doubling the project, you're doubling the risk. Where are you going to get the money from for the housing, etc., etc., etc. Well, anyway, we stuck to our guns and we got agreement that we could include that. We got an asset transfer, which we can, so the council can asset transfer buildings and land to community organisations. So as a community organisation, we were able to have land transferred to us to put this enterprise centre on and the housing. That was quite a chore to get that from start to finish. It was the last thing that was in place before we put a digger on site. So that's quite stressful. We partnered with Connect Housing. I know there's a lot of Connect people here. We've worked with Connect for like a number of years now. We subcontract the management of our housing to Connect because I'm not really able to organise a plumber at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever else when there's an emergency. So our relationship with Connect is fantastic. We pay a fee per month per house and our tenants get that really good Connect service. We've actually got, in Hebden Bridge, we have planning permission for 20 houses in partnership with Connect. And on this project in Fernie Lee, which is in Todmorden, we've actually, the idea was that we'd own half the houses at the end, but we just decided we're too small. We've got an enterprise centre to build. Connect are really good at taking on housing projects. So basically we agreed that Connect would sort the housing, passive house, social rented, and we would look after the enterprise centre. But we do have regular partnership meetings, so we're running the project together. So basically what we've done is brought in another 4 million on the 4 million that was there. So with regards to the community's view of the land trust, it's like, wow, you've taken your 4 million and you've made it into 8 million, and it's housing. We really need housing. So that's really helped engage people. It gives them a sense of power, that there's somebody here actually doing stuff. The community was engaged in the design. So that was pretty good. Community, we did a consultation. We had a design. We presented it. The design had 2 accesses for vehicles, one on each side of the site, and the people on the west side of the site said that's a really bad idea. So between the afternoon consultation and the evening consultation, our architect had redesigned it, taken out the entrance on the west side. So when people came with their pitchforks to complain about that in the evening, we said, oh, we've already changed it. So that helps create that sense of community. And the other thing is that the Enterprise Centre theoretically will have an operating surplus, and we promote the fact that if you rent an office, the surplus from that rent is going to be used to create more homes. So it's really about showing things really happening. Jerusalem Farm Cottage, that's Craig, you can see, he's our new tenant. Basically lived up the road with his family in a derelict farmhouse. It was pretty dire. So what we did was, the property's been empty for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. We worked out a way of leasing it from the council. We raised money to retrofit it, to make it more energy efficient, renovate it to decent home standards. We got funding from Community Foundation. Some of our members gave us low interest loans. We got a 0% loan from Collardale because we reached a point where we said, look, we cannot do it. We cannot find the last piece of the jigsaw on this funding. So they stepped in and gave us a 0% loan. And we got a Homes England grant as a registered provider. So that's the other thing. I think our track record that we've built up, our reputation, our governance is really hot. We're a registered provider of social housing, so that protects the houses. All contributed to a recent donation of a house in Todmorden to the Land Trust. So we brought that online in January. Basically, the condition was the owner's tenants. Basically, we had to just promise that they'd be able to stay there. Well, we said that we can do that and do even better because our tenancies are secure. So there's no chance of us kicking them out. So that all went really well. So we're hoping we've got another 2 properties that people have bequeathed to us in wills. So when they move on to the next will, those properties will come to us. So we're hoping for more of that. Crown Street, that's another one that's empty for 9 years. Again, we've taken a 21-year lease from the council. There's 2 masonettes up there, 2-bedroom properties. We're just about to start the retrofit and renovation of them. But the unusual thing about this one is there was a fund called the Local Authority Housing Fund, which was given to all local authorities to create housing for refugees. So basically, we've taken a grant from there, which actually covers the whole cost of the project. So it's like, wow, we don't have to go around creating this horrendous jigsaw of money. So by the end of the year, we hope to have housed refugees in there. And the message to the local community is, I mean, it's unlikely, but if the need, dissipated with regards to refugees, then they'd be available to local tenants. And this isn't me asking you to support our work. This is me just summarising the things that people can do to get involved, become a member, invest, lend, donate, sign up to our newsletter, come to our public meetings. And that's basically us. So I've whizzed through that. I realise I didn't give you any opportunity to ask any questions, but it's there now.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody have any questions or comments to Paul?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you. I'm absolutely blown away by the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And with
We
us as
some-
well. Yeah, I didn't realise the connection. It's a complete
Yeah.
coincidence to everyone else on
Yeah.
the Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah. We work mainly with Martin and Saeed. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's great stuff. Thank you. Yeah, we're really proud of what we do.
You should be. It's brilliant.
I mean, for me, look, as social housing providers, there's an implicit social purpose. But what really strikes me, Paul, is what you are doing to support refugees, because that is just fantastic, really. And often when we talk about supporting the vulnerable, sometimes we might not always think about refugees, but I just think it's fantastic that you are doing that. And I suppose in the process of housing refugees, you're actually helping to integrate them into the local community, which is fantastic from a community cohesion perspective.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those two houses, bang in the centre of Hebden Bridge, you know, the shop is literally on your doorstep. Access to public transport, all of those sort of things. So I think if the house had been in Todmorden, we might have got a bit more of an anti reaction, a bit more of a one, not a big one. But I think Hebden's pretty receptive to this sort of thing.
I was actually going to ask that, Paul, because about Hebden Bridge, because of the nature of Hebden Bridge, and in terms of all of the kind of the social action and the independent shops and everything in Hebden Bridge, there's something about the demographics. And I was actually going to ask about whether Hebden Bridge was clearly a suitable place, as you say, and that whether it'd be more of a challenge in a less diverse area, which you kind of hinted at perhaps with Todmorden.
Yeah, I mean, we'd still do it.
Yeah.
We'd still do it. I mean, I think it is very vocal minority, we find. And effectively a lot of people from Hebden have had to move out because it's so expensive and move to Todd anyway. So the demographic of Todmorden is gradually changing as well. So, but yeah, I mean, we're not afraid to do stuff. So.
I think Kirsten had a question about, are there any properties you don't take on due to the difficulties of renovating?
Yeah, we have. When we're offered an opportunity, we have a project initiation document, which is a template that we complete, and we also have a scheme viability assessment spreadsheet, which is basically every number you can think of that you need to work out whether it's financially viable. So we complete those. The spreadsheet will show us where the funding gap is, show us what we're aiming for, and then we'll use that with regards to going to funders. But yeah, we will turn stuff down. We've learned that we don't the hard way. We need we've learned to make better decisions. So yes, but we're very, very sort of. And those two documents have been shared amongst other land trusts, and they're using them as well as a template.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. If there are no more questions, then just want to quickly mop up with a more general discussion about we've met online and we've quickly gone through 4 presentations, but nothing beats face to face. And really, it's just to say that we really want to get everybody together in person as soon as we can. And I'm actually looking at maybe September, October time. And it's more a call out to, it's really a call out to anybody who might consider hosting one of these network meetings. And the only requirement really is to have a room that can probably host maybe 25 to 30 people, be able to provide tea and coffee and lunch. It doesn't have to be a grand lunch or anything like that. It can just be sandwiches with a few crisps. We also try and rotate these around the region, but to be honest, if there's somebody who's interested in hosting a network, then it's not necessarily prescriptive. So if anybody would be interested in hosting the next meeting, just drop me a line. And yes, Kirsty has messaged Archie's. So thank you, Kirsty. Yes, thank you, Kirsty. So if anybody is interested in hosting, just drop me a line. When we had the last face-to-face meeting at Places for People in Leeds, I actually spoke to one of your colleagues, Kirsty at Archie's, whose name escapes me, but and we did speak about Archie's simply because we haven't met in South Yorkshire. We've met Broadacres up north. We were going to meet in Dewsbury, Connect Housing. So that's kind of the vision. So, and thank you, Jason, that Broadacres were fantastic when they hosted us. An amazing building and an amazing launch. So, we can link in outside of the meeting, but we've obviously had 2 offers already. And yeah, we normally say, roughly 10:30 till 2:30ish, so that people can avoid the rush hour. And yeah, that's it really for today. Thank you for everybody's time. I know online isn't brilliant. What we will do is we'll send the recording and the presentations out to everybody, including everybody who couldn't make it today. And we'll go from there. And that's another offer from Paul. So it might be that we probably cover the next few really. So is there anything from anybody else before we finish? If not, thank you everybody. It's definitely lunchtime. So I will speak to everybody soon. Thank you.
Thank you.